So we are reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is introduction. We have discussed this point. What is pure life? When we give up all these temporary activities and take up the activities which are prescribed by the supreme law, that is called pure life. Now we have to understand that it's not that we have to do something out of the world, but we have to simply dovetail our activities in relationship with Krishna. Like eating is not stopped, but we eat Krishna prasadam. Simple. Thinking is not stopped, but think about Krishna. Talking is not stopped, but talking about Krishna. That is called pure life. The Supreme Lord and His transcendental abode are both sanatan, as are the living entities. And the combined association of the Supreme Lord and the living entities in the Sanatan abode is the perfection of human form of life. What is the perfection of human form of life? That a person becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord and goes back home, back to Godhead, Krishna Loka. The Lord is very kind to the living entities because they are His sons. That means a person may doubt, why should Lord be kind to me? Now, if that person is asked, are you kind to your son? So answer is very simple. Yes, because he is my son. The very reason that a person is somebody's son is the cause why a person is very merciful to that person. So because the living entity is naturally the son of the Supreme Lord, that's why Lord is kind. Lord Krishna declares in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Yonishu Kaunteya Sambhavanti Murtaya Tasam Mahat Yonir Brahma Aham Bija Pradapataha. That is the whole shloka. I am the father of all. Of course, there are all types of living entities according to their various karmas. But here the Lord claims that He is the father of all of them. Therefore, the Lord descends to reclaim all of these fallen conditioned souls to call them back to the Sanatan eternal sky, so that the Sanatan living entities may regain their eternal Sanatan positions in eternal association with the Lord. Did you notice this point? The Lord comes to reclaim not only the human beings, but all kind of living entities in all kinds of forms. The Lord comes Himself, that means the compassion of the Lord is nirupadhik. Upadhi means a designation. That's like when I say that I am a human being, then that's a designation. So the Lord's mercy is not based on on a designation. This so and so person is a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or Vaishya Shudra or a woman or any kind of designation is not the cause of Lord's mercy. The Lord is merciful to the living entities by default. That's the point being mentioned. It all appears very simple, but if we reflect, in this world we are normally not merciful, and if we are merciful, we are only merciful if we have a relationship with that person. And sometimes we may be merciful to some animals, but not all animals, not the mosquitoes who bite us. So I'm just saying that the living and the Lord is merciful to all living entities, even those who are very sinful. This is called Nirupadhik Karuna. That means the mercy which is beyond the designations of this world. Very, very encouraging, because if we know the Lord is merciful, and if we know that the Lord is merciful to me also, and is all powerful, then we can take shelter of the Lord. That means despite whatever conditions we have of our consciousness, we can still take shelter of the Lord, and the Lord will be very happy to give us shelter. That is the point we have to understand. The Lord comes Himself in different incarnations, or He sends His confidential servants as sons or His associates or acharyas to reclaim the conditioned souls. Therefore, Sanatan Dharma does not refer to any sectarian process of religion. It is the eternal function of the eternal living entities in relationship with the eternal Supreme Lord. This is very important. Normally, Hindu Dharma is mistaken to be called as Sanatan Dharma, but that's wrong. Even the word Hindu was coined by Muslims because all the people who were living in the west side of Indus River, Sindhu River, they were called as Hindus. So it is not an eternal word. This Hindu word is not eternal. It was coined or formulated by Muslims to call to all the people who are living on the west bank or on the west side of Sindhu River. So Hindu, Muslim, Christian, or all these things are designations. We have explained earlier, last life I may be a Hindu, this life I can be a Muslim. Even in this life, somebody have a faith that I am a Muslim, then he changes it over to Hindu, or Hindu may change over to Muslim. This is not eternal engagement. So the eternal function of the living entity. What is the eternal function of the living entity? To be a servant of Krishna. And Krishna is their eternal master. That is called sanatana dharma. Sanatana dharma refers, as stated previously, to the eternal occupation of the living entity. The word is very interesting. Occupation. Occupation comes from the word occupy. Occupy means to cover the whole space. That means the occupation of the living entity means that the function of the living entity which will eternally occupy its time. The living entity will be eternally occupied in engaging in some sort of service to Krishna. That is called sanatana dharma. He will not have a space for doing service to anyone else except Krishna, or anyone. He will serve anyone in relationship with Krishna only. Sripad Ramanujacharya has explained the word sanatan as that which has neither beginning nor end. So when we speak of Sanatana Dharma, we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripad Ramanujacharya that it has neither beginning nor end. Now it's very, very nice. Why? The living entity is not that the living entity will become servant of Krishna. He is already a servant of Krishna, just that he has forgotten it. Since beginningless time, the conditioned living entities are forgetting the simple point that they are simply servants of Krishna. It's not that they will become servants of Krishna. They are servants of Krishna, they are just forgetful. Just like a child may forget his parents, but does not mean that the parents are not existing. So, the relationship of the living entity with the Supreme Lord is eternal. It has no beginning and it will not end also. But since beginningless time, we conditioned souls have forgotten that relationship. It is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Keho mane, keho na mane, sabai tomar das. Some people accept and some people don't accept, but everyone is a servant of the Lord. This is the point which is being mentioned here, called Sanatana Dharma. You see, very nice discussion coming up now. The English word religion is a little different from Sanatana Dharma. Religion conveys the idea of faith, and faith may change. One may have faith in a particular process and he may change this faith and adopt another. But Sanatana Dharma refers to that activity which cannot be changed. For instance, liquidity cannot be taken from water, nor can heat be taken from fire. Similarly, the eternal function of the eternal living entity cannot be taken from the living entity. Sanatana Dharma is eternally integral with the living entity. When we speak of Sanatana Dharma, therefore we must take it for granted on the authority of Sripad Ramanujacharya that it has neither beginning nor end. That which has neither end nor beginning must not be sectarian, for it cannot be limited by any boundaries. Those belonging to some sectarian faith will wrongly consider that Sanatana Dharma is also sectarian, but if you go deeply into the matter and consider it in the light of modern science, it is possible for us to see that Sanatana Dharma is the business of all the people of the world, nay, of all the living entities of the universe. Non-Sanatana religious faith may have some beginning in the annals of human history, but there is no beginning to the history of Sanatana Dharma because it remains eternally with the living entities. Insofar as the living entities are concerned, the authoritative Shastras state that the living entity has neither birth nor death. In the Gita, it is stated that the living entity is neither born and he never dies. He is eternal and indestructible, and he continues to live after the destruction of his temporary material body. In reference to the concept of Sanatana Dharma, we must try to understand the concept of religion from the. So we will not read further. We will discuss these points which we have discussed now. We read now. See. What are the points which Prabhupada has told? Sanatan. Sanatan means something which has no beginning and no end. This is first point you have to understand. Now, what is dharma? Dharma means, dharma normally is translated as religion, which means a sense of faith. A person may have a certain set of beliefs in certain part of his life, but then slowly his belief may change by association of certain people who have a different kind of belief. Like in my life, for 21 years, I was not worshipping anyone. So basically, I did not have any interest in religion per se. But then when I met devotees, my faith developed in Krishna, which is actually a good faith, correct faith. But the point is, people have different kinds of faith in this world, and that faith changes by the association of people who have different kind of faith. This is very, I think this should be clear. Just like people have, most of the people don't have any faith in liquor, but when they associate with people who have that kind of faith, their faith also becomes contaminated by that kind of faith, and they also begin to have faith or taste in liquor. So that is not the eternal occupation of the living entity, because this can be changed. Something which can be changed cannot be sanatan or eternal. This is the point being driven here. So dharma cannot be translated as faith, because faith constantly changes depending on our activities. We associate with the mode of material nature, and that mode of material nature changes the mode of our faith. This is the point. Now, very nicely Prabhupada explained this point. What is the meaning of dharma? Dharma means the constitutional function of a particular object. Dharma is not, we are not talking about dharma in terms of religion. Dharma means the eternal property or constitutional property of an object which defines that very object. Just like if I take away the quality of liquidity from water, it won't be called as water. If it is frozen, it will be called ice, and if it is vaporized, it will be called steam. It won't be called water. So for it to be called water, it has to have the quality of liquidity. Is it clear? So water always have liquidity. Ice is not liquid, neither is steam. Water is called water because it has liquidity. Fire, we cannot take heat and light away from fire. We cannot take away liquidity from water. I am just stressing the point. Cannot take away. Cannot take away. We cannot take away liquidity from water. We cannot take away heat and light from fire. So that means some property of an object, whether living or dead, which cannot be taken away from that object, is called its dharma. Just like in Ayurveda, the medicine, it is written the guna and dharma. That means the qualities and dharma of this medicine is so and so that it reduces vayu, or it reduces, increases pitta, whatever it is. So that medicine has a specific quality which cannot be taken away from that specific object. That is called dharma. Dharma is not faith, because faith can be changed and dharma cannot be changed. Why am I emphasizing this point? So now, the living entity, as Srila Prabhupada explained, is sanatan. It cannot die, and it never came into existence. It is always existing. So sanatan dharma means the eternal function of the living entity which always remains with the living entity. I think this should be very clear. Sanatan dharma means the quality of the soul which remains eternally, life after life, with that living entity. At no point of time that the living entity cannot have that quality. That is called sanatan dharma of the living entity. Is it okay? So now, very interesting. Very nicely Prabhupada is mentioning this point. Something which is eternal cannot be bound in limitations. A sect, or not a sampradaya in a sense, but sect means a particular kind of cult, has a beginning and many times they end also. Many times we have seen that. We have seen this, the whole world sees there are certain group of people, they come together, they form a group, and after some passage of time, that group becomes dissolved. So since this groupism or group has a time, and then they have a starting point and end time, so sanatan dharma cannot be bound in this kind of sect. So Prabhupada says, just like you see, the Muslim religion was started around 2000 years back, if I'm not wrong. Christian religion was started around 2500 or 3000 years back. So Sanatan Dharma, or even Hindu, name Hindu was coined some thousand years back. Some thousands, I don't know how many thousands, but some thousands. So now that cannot be Sanatan Dharma because they have a beginning in time. That's the point being mentioned here. So some people think that this Sanatan Dharma also refers to those people who are Hindus, but that will be wrong. So that's what Prabhupada is saying. This cannot be limited to boundaries. This cannot be limited to a group of people. One interesting point is a sloka comes in Sanskrit, is called Manyate Atmavat Jagat. As a person is, he thinks the other people are also like that. So people have a certain kind of faith developing in some special zone of time. Then we think that, then they think that Sanatan Dharma also refers to this kind of faith developed over a period of time. But that's wrong. So non-Sanatan religious faith may have some time of origin, but Sanatan Dharma is not. So what is that Dharma? That Prabhupada will explain further, but we'll take it later on. But what Prabhupada explained here is that the living entity is not this temporary material body and it is eternal. And what we can see is that the living entity is constantly serving. We constantly need someone as an object of our service. Since if you don't want to meditate on the whole internal function, just see right from the time we take birth, we are either accepting service or giving service. We are constantly doing that. Constantly. And you cannot even point out one point where we are not serving. Say, no, we are sleeping. So if we are sleeping, then we are serving our body. Either we are serving the senses, you are serving somebody else's senses. We are constantly serving. So service, even a dog is serving someone else, the person is serving the dog, like that. So everyone as a living entity is serving. And the living entity's eternal function, a Sanatan Dharma, is to serve. And that's how the living entity becomes happy. And Krishna also, now you must say that in this world, there are our masters are changing. But the living entity being eternal should also have an eternal master. And that eternal master is Krishna. So that's why Sanatan Dharma means eternal service attitude towards Krishna. That is the meaning of Sanatan Dharma. Further we will discuss tomorrow. This is the point we were mentioning here. And then we'll take it up from tomorrow. Shrimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande.